911. I just got home and I opened the door and my husband's dead on the floor. Is he awake? I don't know. I can't do it. I can't look.
The following documentary contains detailed accounts of premeditated murder, family conspiracy, and the murder of a terminally ill man by people he trusted completely. All events depicted are real. All individuals named have been convicted in a court of law. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. This content is intended for mature audiences only. Before we begin, if this case is new to you, I need you to watch until the very end, because the detail that finally broke. This case open is something investigators almost missed. It was hiding in plain sight, the same way the killers were. If you have followed this case before, drop a comment below telling us what you think the real motive was, and subscribe, because every week we cover cases like this one, exactly the way they deserve to be told. Now, let's go back to Greeley, Colorado. August 2017. On the morning of August 16, 2017, a woman in Greeley, Colorado called 911. She said she had come home and found her husband dead on the floor. She told the dispatcher she couldn't look at him. She told investigators she thought it was his heart. She told them he had been sick for years. 2 days later, the coroner found 2 bullet wounds in Randy Baker's body. One was fired from a .22 caliber placed behind his ear. The other was fired from a .45 caliber into his shoulder. The cause of death was changed from natural causes to homicide. The wife who couldn't look at her husband had already, on the day she found his body, called a contractor to discuss renovation work on the house. And before investigators could even name a suspect, that same wife would point to a photograph of a man she had never met and tell detectives she was 100% certain he had killed her husband. She was lying. And investigators knew it. That lie would be the thread that unraveled everything. Greeley, Colorado sits on the high plains east of the Rockies. It is a city of 100,000 people, oil fields and feedlots at the edges, quiet residential streets in the middle, and the Rockies visible on the western horizon on clear days. The kind of city where people know their neighbors. The kind of city where a man can rebuild a life. Randy Baker had needed to rebuild his... In his younger years, Randy had struggled with substance abuse, a fight that nearly took everything from him. There was a period of his life that included prison. There was a period that included losing control of nearly everything he had built. He had been, at his worst, the kind of man people gave up on. But Randy Baker did not stay that man. He got clean. He committed himself to sobriety, with the kind of discipline that only people who have been to the bottom seem to find. And then he turned that discipline into a purpose. He became a drug and alcohol counselor. He worked with people in the prison system, people who were sitting exactly where he had once sat, looking at exactly the kind of future he had once faced. He was good at it, because he understood it from the inside. Randy had a daughter from his first marriage, a woman named Betty Winnick. She has spoken publicly about her father in a way that stays with you. She said, "He was my person. I went to him for anything and everything." That is not the description of a distant father. That is the description of someone who showed up. Randy had also been married before Kelly, to a woman named Dory. That marriage produced Betty, and it lasted until Randy met a local hairdresser in the late 1990s. Her name was Kelly. The marriage to Dory dissolved. And in 1999, Randy Baker married Kelly. For a time, by all outward appearances, they were a functioning couple. Kelly ran a hair salon out of their home on 44th Avenue. Clients came in. The house was busy. There was money, there was routine. There was the daily structure of a life built together. But Randy's body was already working against him. In 2003, he was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, a degenerative heart condition that would shadow the rest of his life. Over the following years, his health declined. In and out of hospitals, medication, monitoring, the steady narrowing of a life that illness does to a person quietly over time. By the spring of 2017, Randy had undergone open heart surgery. He was recovering. He was 59 years old, and he was so unwell in the final month of his life that he had fallen asleep at the wheel 5 times while driving. 5 times. In 1 month, a man trying to stay alive in a body that was closing down around him. He had a wife who ran a salon from their home. He had a sister who came to visit nearly every day. He had a nephew whose drug addiction he had personally helped to treat. He was surrounded by people who told him they cared about him. Every single one of them was lying. Randy Baker had an older sister named Carol Baker. The two of them had never been close. Not really. A lifelong friend of Randy's described Carol as, in his exact words, evil. He told investigators that Randy and Carol had been at odds with each other since childhood, that the conflict between them was not occasional. It was permanent. Carol Baker, however, had spent the better part of 20 years building an extremely close friendship with Kelly Baker, Randy's wife. Carol was at the salon almost every day. She was, to all appearances, practically a member of the household. Randy's daughter, Betty Winnick, later described the dynamic with a clarity that no investigator could have summarized better. She said, "It was kind of Kelly and Carol versus my dad. And it became that way in a big way once all of us kids were out of the house." Kelly and Carol, one unit, one side, against Randy in the spring of 2017. As Randy was recovering from heart surgery, Kelly Baker made a decision. She moved out of the home they shared on 44th Avenue. When she left, she took $27,000 from the house with her. She also began consulting with a realtor about the home's value. The realtor suggested she sand and stain the front door and remove some wallpaper to increase its sale price. Kelly was already thinking about what happened after Randy. On July 1st, 2017, 6 weeks before Randy's death, Kelly Baker had a conversation with her husband. She told him she was done. She told him, in words that were close to direct, that she was tired of waiting for him to die. Pause 3 seconds. Those words would eventually appear in an arrest affidavit. By this point, Kelly Baker had also begun a relationship with another man. She had a new life ready. She had money from the house. She had a realtor evaluating the property. She had a boyfriend. What she did not have was Randy Baker's life insurance. There were 2 policies. Together, they were worth approximately $120,000. Randy had to be dead for Kelly to collect. And so sometime in the weeks that followed, Kelly Baker reached out to Carol Baker, and Carol Baker reached out to her son. Carol Baker's son was named Kelly Raisley. He went by the nickname Grizz. Raisley was 38 years old. He had a documented criminal history that included ties to the 211 Crew, a white supremacist gang active in Colorado. He had previously been charged with attempted murder. He had spent much of his adult life in and out of correctional facilities. In 2016, he had been released from a 12-year sentence on a Weld County conviction. He was also Randy Baker's nephew, and Randy Baker had been one of the most consistent presences in his life. Randy had worked with Raisley on his drug addiction. He had been someone Raisley could go to, someone who took him seriously. In June 2015, on Father's Day, Raisley had sent Randy a text message. It read, "My dearest uncle, not only have you been a role model and inspiration to me, but the closest person I have ever had as a real father figure." 2 years and 2 months later, Kelly Raisley used a .22 caliber pistol to shoot that man behind the ear. The .45 caliber round hit his shoulder. Randy Baker fell just inside the threshold of his own front door, a few feet past the entryway, on the floor of the home where he had lived for years. Raisley took Randy's car, a Pontiac, along with his wallet and his keys. Then he drove away. When Greeley police arrived at the scene the following morning, both Kelly Baker and Carol Baker were outside the house, crying, mourning, performing the theater of grief that investigators would later dissect moment by moment. Both women had airtight alibis for the time of the shooting. That was, of course, the point. Kelly Baker called 911. She told the dispatcher she had come home expecting Randy not to be there, that she had found him on the floor, that she thought it was his heart.
On the front steps out of the house, Kelly told me that she had come over to the house expecting her husband, Randy, not to be home and at work. She had gone in the house and had found her husband on the floor. Kelly told me that Randy was suffering from some serious health conditions, and she thought Randy might have passed away due to some cardio issues.
First responders agreed. The coroner, who initially responded to the scene, told investigators he believed Randy had likely died of natural causes, given his documented health history. The death was classified as an investigated death, not a homicide. 2 days later, the autopsy results changed everything. 2 bullet wounds, one from a .22 caliber, one from a .45. Randy Baker had been murdered. And also missing from the scene, his car, his wallet, and his keys. The case became a homicide investigation. And from the first day, investigators found themselves watching a woman perform grief they did not believe. Kelly Baker was asked to come in. She sat across from Detective John Kenny. She told him about the marriage, how difficult it had been, how sick Randy was, how much she had done for him over the years.
What was the reason for the separation?
Randy was very sick, and he's been very sick for a long time. He had cardiomyopathy, and he was diagnosed in '03. He's been in and out of the hospital, and I did tell him, don't call me a bitch. You know, I'm taking care of you, I'm feeding you, I'm taking care of your clothes, your house, your car. And then I just said at that point, I'm done.
She's putting her dead husband in a bad light, which is the last thing I think someone in that situation would do. And I was really surprised by that.
Am I just waiting here for a second? Do you need to use the bathroom or coffee or water or anything?
She appeared to cry. Detective Kenny noticed there were no tears. Then Kelly Baker did something that investigators, to this day, describe as audacious. She suggested that a drug dealer she knew might be responsible for Randy's death. She came in and looked at a series of photographs, a standard procedure, and she pointed to a specific image, number 2 in the lineup. She told investigators she was 100% certain that was the man who had killed her husband. He was an innocent man. He had nothing to do with Randy Baker's death. Kelly Baker had pointed at a stranger and accused him of murder. Investigators were astounded, and then they made a decision. Use it. They called Carol Baker in next. They showed her the same photographs, and then they told her, Kelly has already talked. Kelly told us everything about your son. Carol Baker broke. She admitted she had conspired with Kelly Baker to commit murder. She admitted she had been the relay, forwarding messages between Kelly and her son. She confirmed the payment. She confirmed the plan. With Carol's confession in hand, investigators went back to the cell phones. What they found in the forensic recovery was, in the words of one investigator, astronomical. 4,500 messages between Kelly and Carol. The contacts saved as Sonia, tracing to Raisley. Messages about what he would do and what he would be paid. The deleted data, recovered. The lies, documented. Raisley had fled. He had taken Randy's Pontiac, stripped the license plates, and wiped the surfaces. He had given the car to his mother. Carol had given it to another nephew, a man named Mark Raisley, telling him to destroy it. Mark Raisley and his girlfriend, Santita Bachand, and his roommate, Mike Osborne, cleaned the car and abandoned it. They did not destroy it. Greeley police found it in a yard in downtown Greeley. Carol had also listed it for sale on Facebook, an error that allowed investigators to trace it directly back to her. Raisley was found in Thornton, Colorado during a coordinated raid. He was arrested and taken to Weld County. 7 months after his arrest, facing the possibility of the death penalty, Raisley agreed to a deal. He admitted to pulling the trigger. He said the 2 women had manipulated him. He said they had convinced him Randy was abusive, a claim for which no independent evidence exists. He said, "I feel like I got played." During an interrogation that was partially recorded, investigators later acknowledged that they had forgotten to turn on the video, capturing only audio for a portion of the session. Kelly Baker made the statement that would define the case. She said quietly that Kelly Baker had been waiting for Randy to die for 14 years, that she simply hadn't wanted to wait any longer. Then she asked for a lawyer. The murder of Randy Baker was not a 2-person conspiracy. It had a support structure. After the shooting, Raisley handed the Pontiac to his mother. Carol Baker then transferred the vehicle to her nephew, Mark Raisley, a second nephew separate from the shooter. Mark Raisley, his girlfriend Santita Bachand, and a roommate named Mike Osborne took responsibility for the car. They cleaned it. They removed the plates. They abandoned it in a yard in downtown Greeley. They did not destroy it because they could not, or would not, or did not fully understand how permanent their involvement had already become. Mark Raisley and Santita Bachand were eventually charged with felony accessory to murder and tampering with evidence. The network of people drawn into Kelly Baker's plan extended well beyond the three principals. It reached into a second generation of the same family. That is what this kind of crime does. It does not stay contained. It expands outward, drawing in people who believe they are helping and discovering too late that helping means being charged. Kelly Raisley pleaded guilty in May 2018 after accepting a deal that took the death penalty off the table. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Carol Baker pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in September 2018. In January 2019, she was sentenced to 30 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections. Kelly Baker refused every offer made to her. She maintained her innocence. And so, in May 2019, her case went to trial before a Weld County jury. The trial lasted nearly 3 weeks. Carol Baker took the stand and testified against the woman she had conspired with, her sister-in-law, her friend of 20 years, the person who had been the architect of the plan that took her own son's freedom and her brother's life. Kelly Raisley also took the stand. He had agreed, as part of his deal, to testify against Kelly Baker. But when the moment came, he refused to fully recount the story he had told investigators. He sat in that witness box and went silent on the specifics. It did not matter. The text messages existed. The cell tower data existed. The forensic evidence existed. The confession Carol had given existed. The statement Kelly Baker herself had made in the interrogation room existed. The jury deliberated and returned a verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Weld County Chief Deputy District Attorney Anthea Carrasco spoke about Kelly Baker after the conviction. She said, "We got to know the real Kelly Baker. What became clear to us is that she is a manipulator." Kelly Baker was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The legal record of this case is complete. 3 convictions, 3 sentences. The law has spoken. But the question of what actually drove Kelly Baker to do this, the true weight and shape of her motive, is one that the evidence can gesture toward without fully resolving. The official financial motive is clear: approximately $120,000 in life insurance, the house on 44th Avenue, freedom from the role of caretaker, a new relationship already underway before Randy died. These are documented. These are real. But $120,000 split across 18 years of marriage is not, by any measure, a life-changing sum. People do not typically orchestrate a multi-person family murder conspiracy for numbers that small, which suggests the money was one layer of motive, not the whole of it. Investigators found something more in the recovered text messages. Kelly Baker believed, according to Carol's account, that Randy would never leave her alone, that even after the separation he would remain a presence in her life, a claim, a weight, a man who knew her, who had been with her for 18 years, who held information and history she could not simply leave behind. That is a different kind of motive. That is the motive of control, of permanent erasure rather than escape. Carol's role in the conspiracy raises the most unresolved question. She had known Kelly for nearly 20 years. She had been at odds with her own brother since childhood. Investigators found no evidence that she had been coerced. Carol was, by the accounts of everyone who knew her, a willing participant, the person who recruited her own son as the trigger man, then tried to dispose of the evidence afterward. Did Carol act out of loyalty to Kelly? Out of her own decades-long resentment of Randy? Out of the kind of hatred that only a sibling relationship can produce? Or had Kelly Baker, over 20 years of daily friendship, systematically cultivated Carol's resentment until it was indistinguishable from Carol's own? There is no clean answer to that. The law treated them as co-conspirators. The psychology of how they arrived at the same place remains murkier. And then there is Kelly Raisley. He stood in a witness box at Kelly Baker's trial and refused to say what he had told investigators. That choice, to partially protect the woman he claimed had manipulated him, is strange if the manipulation theory is entirely true. You do not protect the person who, as you claim, destroyed your life, unless you still feel on some level that you owe her something, or that telling the truth completely would require accounting for your own choices in a way you are not prepared to do. Kelly Raisley is currently incarcerated at the Sterling Correctional Facility in Colorado. He is serving a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. He is 44 years old. Carol Baker is held at the La Vista Correctional Facility in Pueblo, Colorado. She is currently in her 70s. Her earliest parole hearing is not scheduled until 2030. Kelly Baker is serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. She has given no public statements since her conviction. Mark Raisley and Santita Bachand were convicted of felony accessory to murder and evidence tampering. Their cases were resolved separately from the three principals. Betty Winnick, Randy's daughter, has spoken about her father publicly, including in the Dateline NBC episode The Secret Keepers, which aired in June 2020. She has described the loss in the same terms she always has. He was my person. Randy Baker was 59 years old when he was killed. He had been clean for decades. He had spent those decades helping other people survive the same demons he had once fought. He had rebuilt a life out of the wreckage of his early years. The people closest to him took it from him anyway. On Father's Day 2015, Kelly Raisley sent Randy Baker a text message calling him the closest thing to a father he had ever had. 26 months later, Raisley stood in the doorway of Randy's home and fired 2 rounds into him. The question this case leaves us with is not one that any verdict can answer. It is this. Kelly Raisley said he was manipulated. Carol said Kelly was the mastermind. Kelly Baker said nothing that helped anyone understand anything. But somewhere in the months between that Father's Day message and the August night Randy was killed, 3 people made a series of individual choices. Each choice was made by a person who had other options. Each choice moved the plan forward. And each choice ended at the same place, in the entryway of a house in Greeley, Colorado, on a summer evening, in the body of a man who had done nothing to deserve what was coming. We want to know what you think. Kelly Raisley had the most direct role in Randy's death, but he has consistently described himself as the least responsible. Kelly Baker planned it. Carol Baker enabled it. Raisley executed it. If you had to place them in order of moral culpability, not legal culpability, which the courts have already handled, what would that order be? And does your answer change when you remember the Father's Day text? Leave your answer in the comments. Subscribe if you want more cases covered this way, and share this, because Randy Baker deserves to be remembered for who he was, not just for how he died.